Imagine you're walking through southern France about 55,000 years ago. The air smells like pine and wet earth. You've been tracking a deer for 3 hours, and your stomach is cramping from hunger. In the distance, you see smoke rising from a cave, the one your family has used for 6 generations. But when you get closer, something's wrong. There are people there, not your people. They're taller than you're used to. Their faces are different, narrower, their foreheads higher. They're wearing clothes you don't recognize, using tools you've never seen, and they're speaking in sounds that almost make sense but don't quite. Here's the thing, for thousands of years, that scenario could have gone either way. Those tall, narrow-faced people, your ancestors, Homo sapiens, they were not the obvious winners. They were newcomers, outsiders, and the people already living in that cave, they'd been there for 200,000 years. They'd survived ice ages that would have killed you in a week. They had bodies built for the cold, brains actually larger than yours, and a track record of survival that made your species look like naive children stumbling into a world they didn't understand. Those people were Neanderthals. And for a very long time, maybe 10,000 years, maybe longer, it genuinely wasn't clear which species would make it. This is the story of the species that almost replaced us, except that framing is backwards. We were the replacements. They were the originals. And the fact that you're here reading this instead of a stocky, barrel-chested, cold-adapted descendant of those cave dwellers is not nearly as inevitable as you think. Let's start with something that will probably annoy you. Neanderthals were not stupid. This needs to be said first because centuries of art, literature, and frankly racist Victorian science have embedded this image of the shambling, grunting caveman so deep in our cultural DNA that it's hard to see what was actually there. The archaeological record tells a completely different story. Neanderthals had brains that averaged 1,410 cubic centimeters. Modern human brains average about 1,350. Yes, they had larger brains than we do. Brain size doesn't directly equal intelligence, obviously. Whales have bigger brains than us, and they're not building rockets. But it does mean that the lazy assumption that we outthought them is not supported by the anatomy. Their brains were structured differently, slightly flatter, more elongated, with larger visual processing centers, and a smaller frontal cortex, the area associated with abstract planning and social cognition. But different doesn't mean worse. It means adapted for different priorities, and they were stunningly well adapted. A Neanderthal skeleton found at La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, dating to around 50,000 years ago, showed a level of muscular development that would make a modern Olympic wrestler look delicate. Their bones were thicker, denser, built to handle stress we can barely imagine. Attachment points for muscles were pronounced ridges on the bone's surface. These were people who could tear apart animal carcasses with their hands, who could hike 20 miles through snow, who could survive impacts and injuries that would hospitalize a modern human. They lived in Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years. Let that number sit for a second. 300,000 years. Anatomically modern humans, our species, have only existed for about 300,000 years total, and we've only been doing anything we'd recognize as civilization for the last 10,000. Neanderthals had already been successfully surviving, thriving even, for longer than our entire species has existed when we finally showed up at their doorstep. And they were there first during the hardest possible time. The Pleistocene epoch, the period Neanderthals dominated, was a nightmare of climatic instability. Glaciers advanced and retreated across Europe in cycles lasting thousands of years. Temperatures swung wildly. Entire ecosystems appeared and vanished. The animals they hunted, woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, giant elk, these were some of the most dangerous megafauna that ever existed. And Neanderthals hunted them at close range with wooden spears. We know this because of a site called Schöningen in Germany, where researchers in 1995 discovered wooden throwing spears dating back 300,000 years right in Neanderthal territory. These weren't crude sticks. They were carefully crafted, weighted, balanced for throwing, made from spruce trees selected for their straightness and strength. Neanderthals understood physics and material science well enough to engineer weapons. If you're finding this fascinating, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from. They controlled fire, not just used it, controlled it. Evidence from sites like Pech-de-Lazay in France shows Neanderthals were creating fires consistently at least 400,000 years ago, possibly earlier. They selected specific types of wood for specific purposes. They used fire to treat birch bark and create tar, a sticky adhesive they used to attach stone points to wooden handles, a process that requires maintaining specific temperatures for extended periods. That's not luck, that's chemistry. They buried their dead. Not all of them, not always, but enough that it shows up repeatedly in the archaeological record. Shanidar Cave in Iraq, which we mentioned earlier, had multiple Neanderthal burials, some with what appeared to be flowers placed with the body, though this is debated. La Chapelle aux Saints, La Pharasi, Kabara Cave in Israel burial sites keep appearing, and burial means something profound. It means they had a concept of death that went beyond the biological. It means ritual, possibly belief, definitely emotion. They made jewelry. In 2015, researchers published findings from Krapina, Croatia, showing that Neanderthals were collecting eagle talons, some of the largest and most dangerous parts of one of the most dangerous birds in Europe, and modifying them, possibly to wear. This was 130,000 years ago, long before modern humans arrived in Europe. They were decorating themselves, signaling identity, doing something symbolic for no survival advantage except the social and psychological. So, what happened? If Neanderthals were this capable, this adapted, this successful for this long, why are they gone? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. They're not entirely gone. If you're of European, Asian, or even slightly mixed descent, you carry Neanderthal DNA. The percentage varies, usually between 1% and 4%, but some individuals have more. In 2010, the Neanderthal Genome Project, led by Svante Pääbo at the Max Planck Institute, published the first sequencing of the Neanderthal genome. What they found rewrote human history. Modern humans and Neanderthals interbred. Not once, not rarely, but repeatedly over thousands of years. The genetic evidence shows multiple waves of interbreeding, primarily in the Middle East and Europe between roughly 65,000 and 47,000 years ago. Children were born. Those children survived. They reproduced. Some of their genes were advantageous and spread through the modern human population. Today, Neanderthal gene variants affect your immune system. Specific Neanderthal alleles are associated with increased resistance to certain pathogens, which makes sense. Neanderthals had been living in Eurasia, exposed to Eurasian diseases, for hundreds of thousands of years. When modern humans arrived from Africa, interbreeding gave us a shortcut to immunity that would have taken tens of thousands of years to evolve independently. Other Neanderthal genes affect skin and hair. Some are associated with lighter skin tones, an adaptation to lower UV radiation at northern latitudes. Modern humans evolved in Africa under intense sun. Neanderthals evolved under gray European skies. We got their adaptations through reproduction, not evolution. But here's the deeply strange part. We also carry Neanderthal genes that increase susceptibility to depression, to type 2 diabetes, to certain autoimmune disorders. Why would natural selection keep those? Possibly because in the environment Neanderthals lived in, those genetic variants had different effects, possibly neutral or even beneficial. In our modern environment, high-calorie diets, sedentary lifestyles, chronic stress, those same genes cause problems. Genetics are not destiny, they're context-dependent. There's a site in Romania called Peștera Cuiesi, the cave with bones. In 2015, geneticists analyzed a jawbone found there, dated to about 40,000 years ago, right at the overlap period when Neanderthals and modern humans were both in Europe. The individual had between 6 and 9% Neanderthal DNA. That's enormous. That means this person had a Neanderthal ancestor just 4 to 6 generations back. A great-great-grandparent, maybe a great-great-great-grandparent, was fully Neanderthal. Think about what that means on a human level. Families, mixed families. Children who were part one thing, part another, growing up in communities that were blending, however slowly, however incompletely. So, if there was interbreeding, if there was integration, why didn't Neanderthals just blend into the modern human population and continue? Why did the Neanderthal lineage itself disappear around 40,000 years ago? The answer is numbers, population size. Modern humans, when they started expanding out of Africa around 70,000 years ago, came in waves, large waves. Estimates suggest Neanderthal populations across all of Europe and Asia might have numbered between 5,000 and 70,000 individuals at any given time. That's not a lot. Modern humans, by comparison, were likely in the hundreds of thousands globally and growing. When a small population encounters a much larger one, even with interbreeding, the smaller population's genetic signature gets diluted. It's basic math. If there are 10 Neanderthals and 100 modern humans, and they interbreed at random within a few generations, the specific Neanderthal lineage, the mitochondrial DNA passed down through mothers, the Y chromosome passed down through fathers, those disappear. But fragments of their regular DNA persist. It's called genetic swamping. And it doesn't require violence. It doesn't require anyone to be the villain. It just requires unequal numbers and time. But there was also something else. Something modern humans had that Neanderthals didn't, or at least didn't have to the same degree. Social networks. Not Facebook, actual networks of cooperation and information exchange across enormous distances. Archaeological sites from the period show modern humans were trading materials, specifically good stone for tools, across distances of 200, sometimes 300 kilometers. Neanderthal sites show much more localized sourcing, usually within 30 to 50 kilometers. That difference is massive. It means modern humans had connections, relationships, alliances with groups far away. Information traveled. If mammoths were migrating east, groups 200 kilometers east would know. If a valley had become uninhabitable, everyone knew. Neanderthals, by contrast, seem to have operated in smaller, more isolated groups. Why? Possibly language. This is heavily debated, but some researchers argue that while Neanderthals certainly had language, they may not have had the same level of syntactic complexity. Modern human language is recursive. You can embed ideas within ideas, create hypotheticals, describe things that aren't present, plan for distant futures. If Neanderthal language was less flexible, slightly more concrete, it would have been harder to maintain those long-distance social bonds, harder to coordinate large groups, harder to transmit complex information. There's anatomical evidence that suggests differences in vocal ability. The hyoid bone, which supports the tongue and is crucial for speech, structured similarly in both species, but subtle differences in the base of the skull and the shape of the vocal tract might have limited the range of sounds Neanderthals could produce. Might. This is speculative. But if true, it would have been a compounding disadvantage. Not fatal on its own, but combined with smaller population size, more isolated groups, and climatic stress, it adds up. And there was climate stress. Starting around 50,000 years ago, Europe went through another period of dramatic cooling. The last glacial maximum was approaching. Resources became scarce. Populations that were already small and fragmented got smaller and more fragmented. Neanderthals retreated to refugia, small pockets of habitable territory in southern Europe, places like Gibraltar, the Iberian Peninsula, the Italian coast. Modern humans, with their larger networks, their ability to coordinate and share information, adapted faster. They innovated. The archaeological record from this period shows an explosion of new tool types, new hunting strategies, tailored clothing, shelters designed for extreme cold. Neanderthals innovated too, but slower, or at least the innovation didn't spread as widely. And in those isolated refugia, Neanderthal populations got dangerously small. When populations drop below a certain threshold, inbreeding becomes inevitable. Genetic diversity collapses. A bad winter, a disease, a single failed hunting season can wipe out an entire group. And unlike modern humans, who had reserves, backup groups, distant cousins who could move in and repopulate, Neanderthals didn't have that safety net. The last known Neanderthal population survived in Gibraltar until about 37,000 years ago, possibly as recently as 32,000, though the dating is disputed. They held on in that rocky peninsula longer than anywhere else, and then they were gone, not with a battle, not with a genocide, with a whisper, a slow fade. The last one probably didn't even know they were the last. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. It could have been us. If the timing had been slightly different, if the climate had shifted just a bit earlier or later, if a single epidemic had hit the modern human population in Africa before we expanded, if Neanderthals had developed long-range projectile weapons first, this entire conversation would be different. You wouldn't be here. A different species would be reading a different version of history, maybe wondering what happened to those tall, skinny migrants from Africa who showed up 60,000 years ago and then disappeared. We were not inevitable. We were lucky. Lucky in our numbers, lucky in our timing, lucky in the specific set of cognitive and social tools we happened to develop right before expanding into a world that was, for a brief window, just vulnerable enough to let us in. So next time you feel confident about humanity's place in the world, about how, obviously, we were always going to end up top, remember this. The Neanderthals had a 300,000-year head start. They had bigger brains. They were stronger. They survived conditions we would die in. And they were winning, right up until they weren't. We didn't replace them. We absorbed them, diluted them, outlasted them by sheer demographic weight and a few very specific advantages that compounded at exactly the right moment. They're inside you right now. In your immune system, in the proteins that help you survive winter, in genes you'll pass to your children without ever knowing where they came from. The species that almost replaced us didn't vanish. They just became part of the crowd. And honestly, that might be the only reason any of us are still here.